got our great friend, Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker, who has just returned from the Ukraine. Roger, I was going to start in and give you a big lead in on the Ukraine-Russian problem, which I don't understand anything about, but I figured you could tell us in your own words. When I saw the Yellen article in the Wall Street Journal, I'm sorry, I lost it, and I feel compelled to make a response before the ink is dry on the page. But you, sir, are a free enterpriser. Most importantly, you have just come back from the Ukraine. And maybe you can explain to us, really, seriously, what is going on, because I don't see any progress. I see, President Biden and Mr. Blinken reacting to Putin. Now we're going to talk about closing the embassy. It's almost as though we expect them to invade. Roger Wicker, thanks for coming on. Happy New Year. Tell us what's cooking in Ukraine.
Well,
maybe you can explain
first of all, let me say this, Larry. That monologue is the very reason why you were one of my favorite people to work with in the Trump administration. Bravo.
Thank you, sir.
It's just brilliant. Yes, we don't need any more of that Build Back Better. And all President Biden really had to do when he took office was leave the Trump tax cuts that you and I worked so hard on, leave them in place, lift the burden off of job creators, and let this economy take off now that we have learned to live with COVID. So bravo for that. I'm happy to talk about Ukraine. I do think the folks over there are resolved that they're going to have to fight Russia one way or the other. They're not panicked, but they've already lost 14,000 troops, 14,000 fatalities since Russia invaded the first time, and I think they're prepared to fight. And they're our friends. They are entitled to make their own determination and be a free market society that looks westward if they want to. And I think we and our NATO friends ought to help them if we can.
Right. Now, you've come back and you sponsored some new legislation that would provide more weapons for the Ukraine, as I understand it. Perhaps you can just tell us a word about that. And then I want to ask you about all these diplomatic stories we're reading about.
Oh, okay. Well, what the legislation is intended to do is give a bipartisan show of support for giving more weapons to let the Ukrainians defend themselves. And basically, it's about half Republicans and half Democrats on this. And at our press conference earlier this week, again, we try to make the point that we're sending a strong message as Americans that the Russians don't need to be allowed to go any further on this. They invaded Georgia. They invaded Ukraine. They're led by a man who poisons his political opponents, who assassinates former members of the government that he doesn't like. And he's part of a rebuilding of Ronald Reagan, what Ronald Reagan described as the evil empire. And the least we can do is help our friends defend themselves. And that was the purpose of our trip last weekend, a lightning trip back and forth. And it's the purpose of this legislation, to allow this president to sign a bill making a statement that there's bipartisan support for freedom and market forces.
Senator Wicker, I think you were suggesting earlier, I just want to circle back on that. The Ukrainians themselves, I don't know, you were in Kiev, I take it, or perhaps you were in other parts of Ukraine. It sounded like you suggested the Ukrainians themselves expect Russia to invade in one way or another.
I think they've been at war since 2014. They expect another invasion. They hope we can withstand it. But let me tell you what, the Poles also are very concerned. In addition to the eastern part of Ukraine, now the Russians are moving elite forces into Belarus, dangerously close to Poland, and of course Poland is a NATO ally. And I think we had the former national security advisor to President Trump on, Mr. O'Brien, a few moments ago. He said we need to be moving tanks in to help the folks in Poland defend themselves. I totally agree with that. The Russians are dangerously escalating this, and they've gotten away with it every time since Mr. Putin took power.
I want to ask, does it seem to you, Senator Wicker, you've been in this game a long time, and I would extend that to the Ukrainian officials, but your judgment is more powerful to me at the moment. It seems that Biden is reacting to Putin rather than get ahead of it, let's say, begin sanctions on the banking system. I mean, Biden actually said yesterday at his presser, whatever it was, yesterday, Wednesday, he said, we can keep the Russians out of the dollar-based financial system. He's right. We could keep them out of the SWIFT system that runs all the transactions. 90% of them are dollars. We could block the central bank or the individual banks. We've done that before. But, Senator Wicker, we don't do that. We talk about it.
Well,
we talk about. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Listen, we got 55 votes on a bipartisan basis for the Cruz legislation, which, by the way, the Democrats filibustered using this tool that they were denouncing the next week. But we got 55 votes, including 6 Democrats voting to go ahead and sanction on Nord Stream 2. We needed 60 votes, but still, though, yes, the president should have done that. And frankly, it's not so much what he says, although he had a really bad press conference. It's what he's done. He gave Russia their #1 foreign policy objective, and that was Nord Stream 2. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, where he made flat statements that he was unable to fulfill a day or two later. Those speak louder than what the president actually says.
Is putting out a bold, I don't know whether the State Department has done this. It's been reported today that they're going to do it to evacuate our embassy, I presume, in Kiev. Is that an acknowledgement of defeat? Does that sound like, a pre-Afghanistan defeat?
It sends a terrible signal, and I'll tell you, it's one of the things the defense minister and the president of Ukraine asked us definitely not to do. And now we see rumors and statements that, in fact, yes, we're getting ready for contingencies to move some of our personnel out. It's exactly the wrong signal to send, and it's exactly what our friends in Kiev ask us not to do.
Wow. And finally, so Secretary of State Blinken meets with Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, today, or yesterday, their time, whatever. And nothing came of it, Senator. As far as I can tell, they agreed to continue to exchange papers or some damn thing. I mean, this has been going on now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And again, it seems like we are in a reactive mode, and that Putin and his gang, they are the ones, like a tennis player on his or her toes. We're on our heels. And I don't see that change. We're going to go through this weeks and weeks, so we give Putin more advantage, more turf, more weapons. It's kind of driving me semi-crazy because, like you, we have to protect our sovereignty. And if the Ukrainians someday want to join NATO, they should be allowed to join NATO. We can't let Putin dictate the terms of trade in global politics.
No question about it. You've just pointed out, Larry, why you and I, neither one would be very good in diplomacy. I mean, people have to do that, but it's a lot of talking, a lot of back and forth. What we ought to be doing is bringing in all of the weapons we can spare to let our Ukrainian friends defend themselves against aircraft and against tanks. We ought to encourage our NATO allies to do that. We saw a British cargo plane offloading some anti-tank weapons the other day as we were taking off from the Kiev airport. That's the sort of action that you and I like. We have to have diplomats and secretaries of state that talk endlessly, but what we need is a show that we're going to try to give these freedom-loving people who want to turn away from Russia and be Western and be free and be market-oriented. We need to give them the ability to fight for themselves.
All right, amen to that. Senator Roger Wicker, thank you, sir. It's wonderful to see you. Happy New Year. Talk soon.
Thank you.
All right.